and welcome to Sibos 2018 in Sydney. I'm Hannah Wallace, and with me now is Balazs Fejes of EPAM, and we're going to be talking about technology in APAC. Hello Balazs, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today. How are you enjoying the event so far?
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, lots of new people to meet.
And now firstly, I want to ask you, how did fintech get so big in China, and what are the key areas where China Financial Services is leading the way?
Yeah, so when I got to China, we started an office there about 5 years ago. And so I got basically first-hand experience, spending a lot of time in our Shenzhen office, seeing the transition of how people started to use financial services via their phone. I think mobile payments are really the kind of starting point for this, the main vector of transformation there. And from being an accepted way to pay for services and products, using WeChat or Alipay, I saw the transition year by year when it became more of a preferred way. And at some point, in the last year or so, now it's kind of an exclusive way to pay for a number of services and products. So, if I go to my noodle shop near the office, 5 years ago I had the option to use Alipay, scan a QR code and pay for my noodles. 5 years later, it's the only way. When you go into a coffee shop and you're the foreigner there and you pull out the cash, you kind of hear the collective groan of people, oh, it's going to be cash. They have to open up the cash box, count out the money, and you hold up the queue. So it's really becoming a default way to pay. And I think it's, through a number of unique elements why it's happening in China. You see how other countries try to go cashless. I think there's a lot of stories around how Sweden, for example, is stepping back a little bit from cashless. But I think China works uniquely in this case. It's a kind of homogeneous market, huge internal market, single language, people use the same services and applications. So it's very easy to spread it across a large population. I think the kind of initial relaxed regulations made it easier for fintechs to roll out services, advertise them massively, and reach a point of market saturation when it becomes acceptable to use this and preferred. So I think it's not something you can replicate in other markets. You don't have the same size of kind of homogeneous market anywhere else. And I think the regulatory changes happening everywhere make it harder and harder to kind of move towards this kind of payments. But I think once you start to accept that people use cashless mobile payments and they use their phones to interact with this type of services, it becomes natural to use them for other purposes as well. So if you have your purchase history, with Alipay or WeChat, that data allows the company to create credit rating for you. So suddenly, if they can do the credit rating, lending, financing becomes possible through the same channels. And in fact, it's easier, safer, faster for everybody. And if you look at the banking market there, it's underdeveloped. Only 9% of people have credit cards in China. So this becomes the default way to pay, to get financing, to send money home. And it's naturally the next step is investing, playing the stock market. I think Chinese customers are naturally drawn to gambling, right? So they use these applications now, within WeChat to invest their money. And it's not just the retail side of financial services. Once you get used to the convenience of using your phone to interact with services, you would expect that your investment banker, your client advisor will reach you via the same channel. So we see a lot of investment banking, wealth management scenarios emerging on the same platforms.
And now you've touched on this a little bit already, but would you say the rest of the APAC region is following in terms of cashless payments, digitization, and financial services?
So I think eventually this is bound to happen, but it's in a much slower pace. And if I look at Hong Kong, where I live, you have the kind of heritage of kind of colonial banking system. So there's the baggage of legacy, which you don't have in mainland China, and also the convenience of existing kind of cashless payment solutions. So if you come to Hong Kong and you get an Octopus card, you're able to pay for services, go into convenience stores, pay for food, and this is how people try to go cashless there. It works, it's established, everybody accepts it, so there's a little bit less pressure to make mobile payments happen. And I think the banking system is just much more elaborate there. You have the traditional services, you have Western side of the business, so there's less pressure. You can get a loan, you can get easily a credit card, you can get the services the traditional way. But I think through the influx of all the tourists from mainland China, they expect to be served with WeChat, with Alipay, with this kind of payment services. They want to be able to book their table at the restaurant through the same channels. So I think that pressure will bring up this business. And I think, really the baggage of banks, I relocated from Hungary to Hong Kong. And for me, like using checks, personal checks was like completely baffling experience. It's not something we have, in more of an emerging market. Yep. It's not something they have in China. I think getting rid of these and kind of, bringing in the new, it's going to take a much longer time. If you look at Singapore, for example, Singapore is all about investing in innovation. It's strongly supported by the government. I think there is a faster pace of changes. I always go back to how I get my noodles. In Singapore, now they are rolling out kind of unified QR code system for merchants in like hawker centers, convenience stores, coffee shops, canteens, where you can use the banking app that you use with OCBC or UOB or other banks, but use a single QR code for mobile payments. And they are using one system to kind of consolidate this kind of payment. And there is a really strong push to roll it out, incentivize merchants to accept this form of payment. So it's going to go much faster.
And finally, Balazs, how can the global firm keep up with the pace of innovation and catch up?
Yeah, so I think first of all, it's very important to join in the conversation with mainland China customers. So to reach them, you have to use the same channels that they expect to use with local fintech providers. So one thing we're doing for our global customers, we're building a bunch of mini programs within WeChat where they can offer their services, their content, they can transact. So you have to go where the customers are, and you have to partner up, with local fintech vendors. And the way to do that is a little bit easier, perhaps, because there's just a fewer number of fintechs you have to look at. There's like 3 big companies you have to work with, and you're very much, done in terms of content distribution, opening up your services within WeChat, allowing payment through their digital wallet, and then, you have to be able to build your brand for the China consumers through these channels.
Fantastic. Well, Balazs, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.